guys, welcome back to the next part of the Build a Spotify app series. In this part, we're going to start putting together search. So get started by liking the video, hit that like button down below for the YouTube algorithm. Let's open up Xcode and let's jump back into our workspace. So let me just go ahead and give this a run in our simulator, make sure nothing's broken. If you guys recall, in the last video, we had hooked up the categories here in the search UI where we can actually tap into these, get categorical playlists, and then tap into even the playlist. Now what we want to go ahead and do is actually be able to search for stuff up here. So songs, artists, albums, even playlists. So what we are going to start by doing is jumping into the managers and the API caller. And of course, we're going to need to write an API call out for search. So I'm going to come to the very bottom here, right before private, and we are going to introduce a new mark comment. And this is going to be search. And basically, we are going to say public func search with query. And this will basically be a string that the user provides based on what they've typed in. And the completion here is essentially going to return once more a result, and then we're going to have an array of search results that get returned. But since we don't have that model yet, I'm just going to stick with a string, and let's also say this closure returns void, just like that. And let's go ahead and write out this request. So right here, I've got the Spotify docs opened up, and there's an endpoint for search. And like you would imagine, it's a get request. So let's go ahead and just write out a basic call to this. We are going to say create request, and this is going to be with a URL, constants, base API URL, plus the search endpoints. It's going to be a get request. It's going to have a completion handler, which builds and returns that base request for us. And let me go ahead and line break all this stuff really quickly. And now basically what we want to go ahead and do is kick this request off. So we're going to say URL session shared, and we're going to say data task with a request and completion handler. So this one right here, request, and we're also going to want a completion. Whoops, this is not the one we want actually. We want a data task with a request and completion. So this one here actually at the bottom. Pass in the request, and the completion gives us data, a HTTP response, which we'll ignore with an underscore, which is discardable, and error, we're gonna make sure that the data is non-nil, aka unwrap it. We'll validate that the error is nil by just making sure that it equals nil. If any of these cases don't hold up, we're gonna say completion, failure, API error, and we'll just pass back the fail to get data. Otherwise, we want to go ahead and convert this stuff into JSON, the data that we have gotten back. So we'll say JSON serialization. We're going to create a JSON object from the data and allow fragments. I'm just going to go ahead and print out said JSON so we can see it in the console. We also need to catch the error. We need to prefix this with a try, and we are going to simply print out the error for the time being. Looks like we have an error somewhere in here. Let me see what went wrong. This should be, let's see, data task with a request. I don't know what that autocomplete is all about. Let me go ahead and fix that. All right, your syntax highlight should come back, should be looking good now. If a error is thrown, we're also going to say completion failure with said error, just like that. Don't forget to actually kick off your task that you have assigned. Common oversight that I even personally make quite often. And that's basically it. That's how we're going to be setting up search. And what we want to be able to do is search for various things. So this search takes in basically one query parameter, it seems like. Well, it takes an authorization, and then takes in one query parameter, which is called Q, which is the actual search thing being searched. So basically what we want to go ahead and do is we can say Q equals, and we can go ahead and drop in query. Now you can also go ahead and encode this for a URL. So you can say, let's see, adding percent encoding for characters. Let's do that one more time. Adding percent coding. That's not what we want. We want adding percent coding, and we want to go ahead and code for a URL set. Basically, what we're saying here, if we take a look at their example, if the user types in something with perhaps a space, we don't want to put the space there. We want to encode it to be URL encoded, so it's supposed to be %to0. So for the allowed set here, we are going to say this is URL, and we want to allow for query allowed, since these are query parameters. And let's see, it looks like this is going to go ahead and return a optional. So we're going to coalesce it to be an empty string, so we get rid of that warning. What I'm also going to go ahead and do is let's go ahead and just print out the actual request that we will be sending off, just so we can actually see that the percent encoding is, working properly, and we'll coalesce that to none. And if we come back here and take a look at the docs, there is also a query parameter called type, and we can specify what things to search. So there's things like album, artist, playlist, track, show, and episode. And if we just read it, this is a comma separated list of items and types to search. So let's go ahead and add this. So we have the cube query parameter. I'm going to add type before this. And let's go ahead and add some of these. So we have, let's see, we have album, artist, and let's also do playlist and track. Why not? We'll do album, artist, playlist, and track, and that should be good. Make sure you put an and % right there, because you want to separate your query parameters. And that said, we should be getting results now if we call this function. So let's go ahead and actually give this a call. So we're going to jump into our controllers, and we're going to jump more specifically into our search view controller. And if you guys recall, when you go into here and start typing in stuff, we actually are printing out every single time that the key is pressed on the keyboard. So we could actually get live updating results. Basically, you would be calling the API for every single key that is pressed, which I guess is fine. So let's go ahead and actually set that up. So that function that gets called every single time we hit a key is this right here. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to say API caller shared, and actually we stubbed it out right here, right down below. I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of this stuff since we're actually building it out now. We are going to say search with a query, which is the given query. This is going to give us a result back. We are going to switch over the results. And if we go ahead and get a successful response, we'll have results. We don't at the moment because we don't actually have models to represent them yet. We'll do that in a moment. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get an error, and we're just going to print it out for now since we're not really handling errors. We also want to go ahead and say do all this stuff on the main thread. And I think there's also a limit parameter we can supply, which in fact, let's see if I can find it, which in fact we can. So let me go ahead and supply a limit that's pretty high so we can see what the results actually look like. So let's go into search right here. I'm going to command click and hit jump to definition. And let's go ahead and supply a limit. So I'm going to do that as the first parameter here. We'll say limit of 10. And go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And let's go ahead and start typing something in here, and we'll see what actually happens. So if we click on this and start typing, let's say Kanye West, you'll see as we type, we do an API call every time, and we get a bunch of results back. So it's kind of lengthy. So I'm going to highlight everything and hit the up arrow to jump to the top. We can see that we have some albums here that it returned. And if we come to the bottom of this, we can see there's another key for artists, which makes sense. We come down, we have a bunch of playlists, and we come down, we have a bunch of tracks. So it looks like it is segmenting out our actual results by the type of result that we get back. The other thing you want to be careful about is APIs do have rate limits. So if you're typing in something super long and doing an API call every single time that you actually go and you actually go and hit a key, you might end up doing like 80 API calls. So just be careful about that. And what we're going to actually do to prevent that from actually happening is we are actually only going to call the API when the user hits the search button down here explicitly. And the only reason I'm going to do that is so we don't get rate limited by the service. So I'm going to take this call and let's see, we have a update search results here. So what we are going to do is, I guess nothing in here, but what we can do is on the actual search controller in view did load, what we could do is once we have assigned it, if I can find where it's actually assigned, let's see right here, search controller, we can say search controller dot search bar dot delegate is self. And now what we want to go ahead and do is also conform to the UI search bar delegate. And what we can actually, in fact, do now is implement another function called search button clicked, I believe it's called. So search bar, search button clicked. And when it's clicked, we can go ahead and actually do the query. But we're going to move all of the stuff in here, this guard statement that I created, out of this function. And we are going to move it to the top of this function here. And we'll need to tweak it a little bit. So we have our search controller. We already have a search bar coming in here, so we don't need to get it from the search controller directly. And let's see what else we need to do. We have a results controller that we're not using, so we have that warning. You can go ahead and ignore it. But now what's going to go ahead and happen is when we hit the search button explicitly on the keyboard, that's when the actual search will get kicked off. So let me go ahead and open this up here. And if we come into here and type in a song, I'm going to go ahead and type in, whoops, we don't want dictation. I'm going to type in the name of a band. And you'll see as we are typing in here, we're not actually printing out results. We're seeing just some other warnings here, which are kind of irrelevant. I keep hitting command on my keyboard so that dictation keeps popping up. So if we go ahead and hit enter, then you see the results pop up. And that's when the keyboard disappears, and that's when we actually want to show the search results. So let's actually talk about how do we want to show the search results? How do we want to design the models? So the first thing we need to do is actually design the codable models that we're going to convert this JSON into. But the other thing that we want to go ahead and do is also define generic search results that we can return from the API back to the caller. So let's do those things one at a time. So first and foremost, we're going to need a response, right? So let's go ahead and open up our models. We're going to create a new file here. It's going to be a Swift file. And I am going to call it a search result. And let's actually rename this to be search result response, just like that, because this is a response from the API. Let's go ahead and add this. So we're going to say search result response, which is going to be a codable model. Now let's see what this has. So we have a album's root key, which points to a album response, I guess. So we're going to say search album response. I'm going to create this right down below here. Again, this is going to be codable as well. And I suspect we're going to need this for artists, playlists, and tracks, and basically all the other top level things that we're searching. So we've got artists here. All right, we're going to copy and paste this right down below. And this one's going to be search. And it will be artists response. And go ahead and just drop that right there. Let's see what the next one is. The next one, I believe, is playlists, which is in fact correct. Let's go ahead and drop playlists right there. And we're going to need to create another response because it points to its own object. So we're going to say this is playlists. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that and drop that there. Continuing along, I think we have one more, which is just tracks. Yep, that's the last one. So we can go ahead and say This is tracks, and this one is going to be search tracks response. If I can spell it correctly, there we go. All right, tracks, Codable, looking good. Now, each of these in the actual inner object has an items key, it appears like. And items is an array of actual items for that given type. So this is an array of albums. This items is an array of artists. This one is an array of playlists. And this last one is an array of audio tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick in items. And let me just double check that it is plural. Yep, it is. And we're going to try to go ahead and use the original models that we had created when we hit the API to get things like an album. And we're going to see if we can reuse the same one. Basically, I'm assuming that the Spotify API returns consistent responses, even though this is for search results. But if it does, that would make our lives a whole lot easier. So we do have an audio track. It might also be let's see, what's a track response? I don't actually recall. So we have a track response that has an audio track in it. All right, this should have an audio track. Let's go ahead and try to use this. Let's see if we can get away with doing this. If we can, I'll be super happy. It'll save us a ton of time. All right, we'll go back to our API caller. And instead of decoding JSON object directly, if I can find where we added search, which is right here, we are going to go ahead and do JSON decoder, and we are going to decode the search response from the data like so. And let's go ahead and just rename this to be results and results. And if an error is thrown, we want to go ahead and print out what actually happened because it's kind of useful to know. And let's go ahead and search for something. So I'm going to search for All American again. And we'll go ahead and enter. And look at that. Our API response, pretty lengthy, is converted to a model and returned to us. So looks like Spotify's API is super consistent with using the same models, even if they're different API calls, which is really great because it helps speed up the development process. But one thing that I was talking about earlier is if we go back to our response here, you can see that all four of these are different. And we want a single type that can encapsulate a search result. So I'm going to create a new model here, and you'll see why in a moment. And I'm going to call this just search result. And we're going to have one object that can maintain different types of search results. And it's going to actually be an enum. And you'll see why in a moment. We're going to have search results that are an artist results. It can be an album results. It can be a track. And the last one is it could be a playlist. Now, it's just going to have an associated inner model for itself. And we use this approach for when we set up our browse collection view sections. We're basically doing the same thing here. And you'll see why this simplifies our life, hopefully soon enough. So we have audio track. This one's going to be a playlist, just like that. And now what we can actually do is if we go back to our API caller, instead of returning those four different types of results, we can say that this function in its success returns an array of search results. And now what we want to do is once we've decoded this results, we're going to say that search results, or let's actually call it, let's call it search results. Why not? Search results is an array of search results. And let's go ahead and just create this as empty to start off with. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is we need to basically take the result and the artists, playlist, albums, and tracks. And we want to go ahead and convert the items in here to a search result. So we're going to say that this is a search result dot, which one did I do here? Looks like we did tracks. We want to do a search result, not plural, search result dot track, and we are going to stick in $0, which is basically the model. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say search results, and we're going to say append contents of this. What we're basically saying is take all the tracks and convert them to one type, which is the search results, and add it into this aggregate array. And we're going to do this for albums, artists, as well as, what's the last one, playlists. And respectively, we want to update this. We're going to say album, artist, and playlist. And actually, we should be able to get rid of this prefix now because Swift can infer what we're doing. And we now have created one type that encapsulates all of our search results, which is really great. And we can return that to the caller via the completion success case. So I'm going to line break this to just separate it a little bit. And now that we have all these search results, we can have one unified way of rendering them. So what I mean by that is at the call site now, if I go ahead and close up our folders here just to clean things up a little bit, what we now have coming back is basically search results, and we can hand our results controller these results. So on this results controller, I am going to say update with results. Now we need to create this function. If you recall, our search controller, search results controller is something that we called search results controller. So I'm going to click into it and we're going to do a couple things. The first thing we're going to do is set the background color to clear. We don't want to set a black background if the user hasn't hit search yet, so it doesn't look like it's, like kind of broken. We're also going to want to lay something out in here when we, actually render those results, which we'll do in a moment. So we're going to override view to layout subviews. And then we added that function call there, which was update with results. And the type here will be search results. And what we can go ahead and do is say self.results is results. This should be an array. And we're going to create this as a private property here on, the view controller, just like that. It's going to be empty by default since that other API call will inform, what search results we want. And basically what we're going to use to render a list of search results, we could use a collection view again, like we did on, on other UI elements around the app. But we're going to actually use a table view. I want to demonstrate how to use a table view as well. And it also gives us a chance to customize the UI for the search experience. So I'm going to go ahead and create a pretty basic table view here just to start off with. And then we'll go ahead maybe in the next video and we will jump into custom cells so we can give it a look and feel that is a little more customized for our app and not the vanilla cookie cutter one that you get. So I'm just creating a table view here and registering a cell to it. We want to go ahead and add this as a subview, as well as set its delegate and its data source. And we also want this table view to be hidden by default. And the reason we want it to be hidden is we're only going to show it if there are valid search results. So even though we've added it as a subview, it will be hidden. We also want to go ahead and conform to the appropriate protocols, so those errors go away down below. For the table view, so table view delegate and data source, we're going to bring in the two required functions for the actual table view. I'm going to move them down here. Number of rows that we are going to have are going to be search results, or we just call them results actually, dot count. And we are going to dequeue a cell in this one. So we'll say let cell is table view, dequeue a reusable row at index path. So let's find the right one. Let's see, dequeue a reusable cell for identifier, which is cell. Index path is index path. And here we're going to say cell. And I'm going to go ahead and just say cell.textlabel.text is foo. So we can go ahead and actually see something. We want this table view to have a frame which matches the entirety of the controller, just like that. And let's see, when we go ahead and update this, we're going to say table view, reload data. If results is not empty, we can say table view is hidden is false. And actually what I can do and be even smarter about this is say table view is hidden equals if this is not empty. So we can say if this is not empty, then the table view isn't hidden. If it was empty, in other words, this would resolve to true. So if it was empty, the table view would in fact be hidden. So just a little trick there, so you can have less code Let's go ahead and see if we actually see something pop up in our UI when we go ahead and search. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a run. We're going to come into here. We're going to search for fruit, and we'll go ahead and hit enter, and nothing actually happened. So what the heck is going on? So we have come into here, I believe. Let's say table view is hidden is true. Let's just hard code that. Let's see what happens. And when we hit the search button, we should in fact be seeing a list in our table view here, but I don't see it. So let's see what's happening. Let me go back to our search view controller. When we actually come in here and we come to results controller, we say update with results. That's on the main thread. Let me come back to the results view controller, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here. That way we can check if it's actually getting called. Let's come back and type in, I don't know, all American, hit enter. And it looks like we did come into there. All right, we hit the continue button there, but we're not seeing our UI. Why are we not seeing our UI? Let me see. So we went ahead and said the background color is in fact nil, or rather clear, on this controller. Let me see if I set a background color on the table view. That'll be of much help. I think that might be the reason actually that we're not seeing it. It's because it's overlapping everything else. All right, if we go ahead and hit enter, still not showing up. So we're adding the table view. We're setting the delegate and the data source. We're setting the frame here to view.bounds. I wonder why it's not showing up. So let me go ahead and give it a background of red here. And let's see what's going on. Bear with me while we debug this together. Let's go back to search, and I'm going to type in something random. All right, so we're definitely seeing our controller here, but we're not seeing the table view, which leads me to believe that the table view's data source, for whatever reason, is not getting picked up. So we are dequeuing properly. We're returning the results.count here. Let me just return 100 to see if that actually fixes anything. We're reloading the data. We're saying is hidden is true. This should be false. That's a clear mistake. Let's try that one more time. And sometimes these little debugging mishaps just happen. All right, we're gonna hit enter. Okay, there are all of our search results. Cool. So let me go ahead and make this red a clear color once more. Looking good. And the table view by default is in fact hidden, which makes sense. And we only want this to be not hidden if search results isn't empty. So if it's not empty, this will say is hidden is true. So actually we want this to be the opposite. So we're going to say is hidden is true if this is empty, otherwise it's not hidden. And here we are going to return a list. The number of things we'll return is the number of results that we have. So let's try that for the 45th time. We'll type in red, and we should see our list of foo. So now what is left to do is actually, instead of showing a list of foo, we want to actually show the search results. So we have one of two options here. We could show basically 4 different sections based on the type of content that we got back for the search results, or we could just show all of the search results, in one section. What I am going to opt to do is we are going to segment out our actual data, and we're going to do it in 4 different sections. So let's go ahead and do that. So right now we have results up here as a one-dimensional array. I'm going to go ahead and do that as a two-dimensional array, and we're going to actually call this a search section. Now this is going to be another model, and I'm just going to stick it up here for the time being. And we're going to say search section. This is going to have a title, and then it is also going to have, let's call it results. And this is going to be an array of the search results in that section. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do, instead of assigning results directly in this update, what we're going to do is first actually filter out various types of results. So we're going to say artists is going to be results, filter, and we are going to filter where the result $0 is a artist. just like that. And we don't actually care about the model. So let's see if I can get away with doing that. Looks like it's going to yell at me. So what I'll do here instead is what we're going to do is switch on $0, which is the nth element that we're iterating over. And if it is a artist, we'll go ahead and return true. Otherwise, we will return false. And this return is actually returning should or should I not filter. And let's see if we hit Command B if it yells at me for doing anything that I shouldn't be. Looks like it doesn't. So let's go ahead and assign our results here. So we are going to have a search section. The first one is going to be artists, and the results are going to be artists, just like that. And now what we can actually do, let's see why this is yelling at me, cannot convert type of section to expected type of array. Let's see, artists should be an array, which it in fact is. Search section should have a title, artist, and a results. Let's see what's going on. Let's see. Okay, so I made this a two-dimensional array when actually we can get away with a one-dimensional array, which makes sense. And basically what I'm gonna go ahead and do is instead of even calling this results, let's call this sections. And let's come in down here and assign this to be sections. And in the table view code, we're gonna now say number of sections will be sections.count. And the number of rows in a given section is going to be sections, the given section, and we are going to say results.count, just like that. It's looking good. And finally, what we can actually do here is get the nth result. So we're going to say the result that we want to render out is going to be in sections, get the particular section that we want. From that, get its results and get the particular search result that we want. And then we can actually, on that result, we can actually switch and find out what type of result it is. So if it is a artist, we have an associated model, and we're gonna give an associated type of cell. If it's an album, we can do something. If it's a track, we can do something. And finally, if it's a playlist, we can do something. Now that's something for now, what we will do just to make sure it's working is I'm just gonna assign something from the model. So for an artist, it'll be their name. I guess for the album, it'll also be their name. For the track, it also has a name. And the playlist even has a name. So looking pretty great. Let me just prefix each of these with what they are so we can actually visualize the difference in the results. So that's a playlist. That's a track. This one is an album. And this one is an artist. And we also want to separate out, visually these sections of results. Let's see why this is yelling at me, because we forgot to add a plus. So we are also going to implement title for section, and we are going to return sections, get the particular section that we want to return the title for, and simply return the title out of the search section model that we have up here. That'll do that. And then we're also going to, in the table view declaration, we're going to give it a style of group. So we'll say frame is 0 and style is grouped. It just makes it look a little nicer. You guys will see what I mean momentarily. And let's see. So we have a artists section. Let's go ahead and let me just go ahead and give this a run. Let's make sure we're actually seeing artists, and then we'll do the other ones as well. So let's go ahead and just search for all American. All right, I'm gonna hit enter, and here are a bunch of artists. So looking good, the All American Rejects, you got a bunch of artists showing up here with even the heading, which is pretty great. Right now, we're not showing any images or anything, but we will be. And we also see the section title. So it's definitely working, and that's good to know. Let me get rid of the prefixes here since we now have these section titles. And that'll basically tell us, what type of content that particular search result is. Let's wrap up this video by just adding in the other types of data that we have, and we should have a total of 4. So we have artists, we have albums, we should have tracks, and we should also have playlists. And I'm just going to change this to be playlist. This one will be track. This one will be album. And we just want to go ahead and add these into our sections here. So let's go ahead and copy and paste that a few times. Don't forget to stick on commas at the end here. Whoops, that's not what we want to do. Stick on commas at the end here, and let's just change this up. So let's think about the order that we want. So maybe we first want, let's call it songs, and then we'll say artists, and then maybe playlists. And then at the bottom here, we'll have albums. Go ahead and update these respectively. So this will be playlists. This is going to be tracks. We already have artists, and this last one will be albums. Go ahead and hit Command R to give it a run. And we should now be able to see all of our search results. So let me search for, I don't know, let me just search for something random. We'll search for the word gone. I'm sure there's a bunch of things. So there's a bunch of songs related to gone. We can go down. There's a bunch of artists related to the term gone, so on and so forth. So I also want to say, if we go back to our API caller, I think we limited the results to, what did we limit this to? We had limited the URL, the number of results to be 10. Now this is 10 results per type. So we are going to actually be creating custom cells for each of these different types. So your list might get pretty long. So if you want to, make this even lengthier, you're more than welcome to. You can do up to 50 per section. I'm not going to do that here because, we're going to have 200 results, which is a little crazy. So we'll stick with 10. But where you can now control a custom cell for each of these. So for a song, we might want to see in a subtitle, like who is it by? We might want to see the album artwork. Same thing for an artist. We might want to see their picture here. We also want to be able to tap into these. So to be able to tap into these, if we come back to our controller, and I could just swipe back if you're on a trackpad, like I mentioned before, we're going to need to implement the delegate for did select row at index path. We're going to say table view deselect row at index path, passing in the index path and animated true. And basically just how we got the result up here in self for row at index, I'm going to copy and paste that actually literally. What we'll now do is we'll switch on that result. So I'll copy and paste that again. And it's actually pretty interesting now what we can do. So the artist is a little tricky since we have not implemented it yet, but the album and the playlist one we've implemented already, a controller that can render it. So the VC here will be an album view controller, and you're just going to basically pass in said model, which we've called just model. And you can go ahead and say navigation controller, and you can say push view controller, VC animated true. And I'm also going to say vc.navigation item. And we're just going to make the large title display mode to be never. And we're going to do this for playlist as well, since we have created that controller as well already. It is simply a playlist view controller. You just want to change the parameter here, which we called playlist. Go ahead and hit Command B. Let's see why it's yelling at me, because cell doesn't exist in this function. Go ahead and give it a run. Let's see what's going on. So it's basically just yelling that we need to add breaks into these cases since we don't have any code in there. So go ahead and do that. You'll still see warnings of unused, associated model values. But that's okay for now. Go ahead and type in, some search in here. We'll type in Kanye West. Here's a bunch of results. Tapping on an artist, nothing happens. But if we tap on an album, we should be, if we tap on an album, which is down here at the very bottom, we should see the respective albums. So I'll tap on this, and it's actually not pushing it. So what the heck is going on? So let's see what's going on. So that's not been rendered. All right, so something weird is happening. Let me go ahead and put a line break here, or a breakpoint rather, and make sure that we're at least coming into this function when we go ahead and tap on it. We have playlist, track, and album. So I'm going to come back to search. We're going to search for something random once again. And let's go ahead and just tap on one of these, not song, not artist, because those two are not implemented. We'll tap on playlist. We definitely come into this function. I'm going to put another breakpoint into playlist. We definitely come into there, but we are not actually going and showing that particular controller. And actually, I just realized why it's not being pushed. The reason it's not being pushed is because this controller is the actual search results controller. And what we want to actually go ahead and do is have the other view controller push the actual new controller. So it's a little tricky to wrap your head around, but what I'm going to go ahead and do is we can say protocol, and on here, actually, yeah, let's just do it this way. So we can add a protocol and we can add a delegate up here. And what I'm going to go ahead and say is show results, and we're just going to pass in a controller into here. It'll be a UI view controller. There's going to be a weak var of delegate on here, just like that. And let's see, what more do we need to do? What we can now do down here is we can say, delegate. Once we've created this controller, we can say delegate, and we want to show the result with this view controller. And back in our actual search view controller, what we'll do is wherever we actually create this results controller, I'm going to say results controller, which is in this guardlet. We're going to assign its delegate to be self. And we want to go ahead and conform here. So I'm going to do that in an extension. Code's getting a little disorganized, but we'll fix that up in the next video. This one is going to be, what did I call it? Show results. And let's see if we can go ahead and show it from here. We'll say navigation controller, push the controller, which is the inbound parameter, animated true. Go ahead and give it a run. So now this controller is responsible for actually doing the push. Looks like we have an error. Let me see what I screwed up. This week, for this to be held weekly, we need this protocol to extend any object. So go ahead and do that, give it a run. I'm going to search for something here. We're going to go down to playlist, since that's the only one using this delegate thing I just added. We're going to tap on one of these, and boom, there is our playlist. And actually, it works pretty well. So we didn't set the small title here, so we're going to do that really fast. So if I come back to the search controller, I'm going to say here VC, or rather we call it the controller, navigation item, large title display mode is never. And let's go ahead and do that for the other ones as well. So basically, if you didn't catch what I did there, in the results controller, I created a protocol to just proxy back the call to the search controller. This one's just the results via the delegate property. And whenever the user taps on one of these actual search result rows in our table view, we use the delegate to basically say, go ahead and show a result with this controller. You should probably, call this function like did tap result. That's probably a more appropriate name, and do all of this stuff there. Let's actually do that really fast. That's probably better, a little bit better naming as well as architecture. So I'm going to say something like delegate did tap results, and we'll pass in the actual search results. This is actually much more appropriate architecture. We would do something up here like, did tap results, and this would be underscore results search result, just like that. So now this is going to proxy back to the search view controller, and we'll come into here now. We'll say did tap results. That's not what we want. Let's go ahead and hit Command B to pick up the change. We'll say did tap results is what we want. I'm going to paste in what we had there originally. And now what we can do is we can actually just configure these view controllers directly in here instead of doing the weird, jumping through hoops and passing view controllers around, since that's kind of cutting corners and not really the proper way to do it. So let's go ahead and configure the view controller, and let's go ahead and push it with an animation. And same thing down here. We want to go ahead and push it as well as configure it. Go ahead and hit Command R and make sure you can open up both the playlist as well as an album. So I'm going to search for Gone one more time, and we are going to come down this list and look for albums, which is, whoops, not that one. That's a playlist. All the way down, well, playlists are clearly working. Let's go ahead and tap on any of these, and you should see the particular album open up that's associated with it. So looking pretty good. Now we just need to make these cells all custom and also let the user tap into, a given artist as well as a given track. So we'll do the custom cells and opening up artists and tracks in the next video. So if you haven't liked the video yet, make sure to do so for the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment down below with any errors, questions, feedback. Love hearing from you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.